Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about some relationships that we can view between two lines. So the first relationship that we're going to look at today is called the parallel relationship. So in this case, you'll have two lines, and now we'll name these lines for simplicity's sake. We'll do A and B, name them by their endpoints. Then let's do C and D as well. So now some important properties of the parallel line. Often you're going to see this mark matching these lines. If you had another set, you might see two lines in each one as well. But the thing to keep in mind is that when two lines are parallel, they never cross. So the way that I was always explained this is that they are a railroad track. Simply, they're never going to touch, and they all follow along each other. So now there's important ways that we can denote these lines so we can explain the relationship just by writing. So let's say we have the line AB up here, and then we have a CD. This is always how you'll start relationships between lines. Parallel lines look a lot like the photo and how we write the relationship. You just write two simple lines like that. And now you can imagine the railroad example that these are two lines that will never touch each other. And that's all you have to know about parallel lines. There isn't much more to it. Now, perpendicular lines are a little more interesting. So again, we're going to have two lines. Let's say we have a line A and B here. Now we're going to have a second line that goes off. We can draw it in the middle just so it's easy to look at. Let's say this one is CD. Now, similar to how the parallel lines had one line to signify that they're parallel and that they will never touch, perpendicular lines, we will see this relationship here of a right angle. Now, if you are familiar with your angles, you'll know that this is a 90 degree. That's all that right angle is, and it's signified by a box, which we have right here. So all that's saying is that this line, CD and AB, when they come together and touch at a point, at that point it's going to create a 90 degree angle. So for the denotation, we can have A and B, and C and D, just like before for the parallel lines, because that's what we named our lines here. And the relationship looks just like the photo. So to say they're parallel, we can write this. That's all you have to do. So for parallel lines, you remember it's like a railroad track, and that these will never touch each other. And then for perpendicular lines, they meet each other at this, which makes a 90 degree angle. So those are those two relations between those. Now when it comes to intersecting lines, it's exactly how it sounds. It's just going to be a set of lines that cross over each other. So a lot of different ways two lines can intersect, but we'll just draw an X. Make it pretty simple. Let's say this is line D and F here. And this is B and C. Now, in the last two perpendicular and parallel lines, we saw that we could write out a relationship just by drawing, and that would kind of explain how these lines are related to each other. But when it comes to intersecting lines, there's not actually a way to denote it. So if your teacher wanted you to explain intersecting lines, you could just say they intersect, and that just means that they cross over each other. So we can view this, and if they wanted you to explain why it's an intersecting line, you could just say at this point right here, we see the lines cross over each other. They don't have to make a 90 degree angle. They don't have to do anything really. They just have to move over at the same point. So let's do some practice just to test the knowledge on this topic. I'll draw one out for example. Let's say this line right here is D and F. These are endpoints. And this line, G, let's have it go to T. We're going to draw a relationship that you'll always see in the photo for these kinds. You have a box. So we have three choices to pick from that we talked about earlier. They could be intersecting lines. They could be parallel or perpendicular. Now if you think back, intersecting didn't have any special symbol to look at. Parallel lines are lines that will never touch if they continue, and we can see that these two lines actually do have a point G, that they do touch at. And at that point, it's going to create a 90-degree angle. So with that in mind, we can say that this is a perpendicular relationship. Now let's look at another example. So say we have two lines, they go forever. Let's call this one DT and this one LS. I'll give them their proper relationship symbol. So this should be an instant signifier for what kind of relationship it is. We have line L and S and D and T. And this line means that they'll never touch, meaning it is a parallel relationship. And we can draw arrows on top, just a type of line. Your teacher might not want that, not necessarily too important. Yeah, these are parallel lines. We didn't put the relationship up here, so for perpendicular, we have lines D, F, because it goes from D to F. Then we have line G and T right there. And we know it's parallel, so it's just like the photo looks like. You don't have to draw the box on here, but basically exactly what you see. Now, an important observation that you can make is that you can have intersecting and perpendicular lines at the same exact time. So we can draw that out. Let's say this line goes from S to T, endpoints. And this goes from P to F. And that we see here, we get a right angle. So yeah, and multiple relationships can be observed at the same time. We can say that S and T is perpendicular to P and F, but they're also intersecting lines. So yeah, if you look back here, they did meet at this point, but you wouldn't typically call that an intersection. An intersection, you would see these lines actually continue through each other. But here we see that they do continue through each other. So those are the three types of relationships. We can go back. We have the parallel relationship where two lines never cross, and that assuming they go infinitely, they will never have an intersection between them. Perpendicular, we'll have one line and another line, and where they do meet, they're going to create a 90-degree angle, which we can see with a box right here. And then an intersection, there isn't any specific way to define it like we had in the past for parallel and perpendicular. However, we can say that the lines cross, and we could point out the point that they do cross at. So if here you wanted to also explain how these are intersected lines, you could just be like right here. At this point, we can see the two lines cross over each other. Beyond that, there isn't much more to observe between line relationships, especially at a base level. This was all you need to know, and if you have a test, just review this video a couple times. It should be plenty of information. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll be glad to answer them. But beyond that, just make sure you like and subscribe to the video, and that'll be all. Thank you, everybody. Take care.